Hello and welcome to the Osceola.com's Seminole Sidelines. My name is Nick Carlisle, staff writer and recruiting writer for the Osceola.com, joined, as always, by head editor Bob Ferrante on a Monday that leads up a week of relaxation. For us as reporters, we finally get a little bit of time to calm down a little bit after 2 weeks of Florida State football. But in a weird way, I think there's a lot of us that are sitting here with an aftertaste in our mouth, a good aftertaste, saying, you know what, I want a little bit more of what Florida State football has brought us so far this season. So it's going to be a little bit of a wait until Kent State I guess technically it is 2 weeks. It is full 2 weeks from now to where we see Florida State back in action again. But how happy are you to get to have a bye week here? It is a bit of an inopportune bye week. When you take a look at the schedule, you would definitely want this bye week to come after the Kent State game, leading into your ACC schedule a little bit. But how are you feeling right now, first 3 weeks into the season? How are you holding up, Bob?
I'm feeling good. I'm loving football season. I mean, obviously, it's a fun team to cover. You know, that was my off-season request. Give me a fun team to watch and cover. It's not just the wins. Hey, they're genuinely fun to watch, right? Look, I can rationalize this bye week early. It's okay, especially from the player standpoint of it was a tough camp. There were some injuries early on. You got some guys working their way back. They need the time. Hey, I love 2 bye weeks in a college football season. The longer these college football seasons go, it almost feels like you've got to build in some of these bye weeks for guys, especially with a 105 roster. I think those kind of things go together too, right? It feels like those are needed. But yeah, I'm with you. Don't love those short turnarounds, those Friday night games, especially on the road. It feels like a shorter, condensed week. I'm be very curious what Mike Norvell and the coaches say when we get to that point about, you got a Saturday game, then you got to do a quick turnaround and be ready. Kent State is technically a bye. Wow. Hey, they are 1-1. They actually won a game. They won a game in 2025. Congrats to them.
They did. Who did they beat this past week? Or was it the week before?
It was the week before because Texas Tech did a number on Kent State in Lubbock, in greater metropolitan Lubbock.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you spend $50 million, that's hearsay and slander. By the way, but $15 million on a college football roster, I would hope that you'd be able to put a shellacking on Kent State. Kent State, it should be a bye week. It should be more of the same that we saw this past week in terms of what Florida State was able to put on a football field. And let's just get right into it, Bob. In terms of what we were expecting, what we were hoping Florida State to do on Saturday, they did pretty much exactly to the T what you wanted to see. Maybe the only gaffe, at least to the I don't want to say the casual eye, because you and I are not casual viewers of this football team, but in terms of the difference between what we see on the football field and what the coaches are going to see when they watch that all 22 back, they're going to say, oh, there's plenty to clean up. There are a lot of mistakes to be fixed. Apart from the fumble in the fourth period, Florida State played about as perfect as a ball game as you probably could have hoped for. You escaped with the win. You got your starters out maybe, I think, fully into the third quarter, but you started to see that second team trickle in about 6 minutes to go in the second quarter. It was about as perfect of a weekend as you could have had if you're Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. What were our pregame storylines? What were our talking points? You want to see the backup quarterbacks. We got that early in the second quarter, moved on. You want to see freshmen. Saw freshmen pretty much, throughout second, third, fourth quarter. You wanted to see a lot of backups. You saw between 80 and 90 players. I mean, it was really kind of anybody who was in position to play was going to get playing time. Amari Williams was playing offense and defense in this game, if it tells you a little bit about where the game went. So, yeah, you saw the quarterbacks, you saw the backups. Didn't get the shutout. I know some fans were really looking for it. We were talking about that on Friday. Man, shout out to Tony White, because he brought up the spiked baseball comment, and I'm like, dude's been here 9-10 months, and he already knows about the Chip Baker thing, and he was mad that they didn't give the effort to block the field goal to try and get it. So yeah, shout out to all those little things I think that we were looking for, and that maybe the coaches were looking forward to.
Maybe not a perfect escape for FSU, however, though, Bob, as Jason said in the chat, you got to get Squirrel healthy. Squirrel and James Williams, probably the two big guys that you lost from that game. According to what Norvell said, it doesn't appear like either of those are going to be long-term injuries. I would imagine for a Squirrel, if it's a wrist and hand issue, we're probably looking at a couple weeks at most. So you'll get that bye week. You'll get that game against Kent State. You're targeting Virginia and ideally Miami for the timetable that you would appear to think that he would be returning in. And I don't know exactly what happened with James Williams and where he is, but it didn't look like it was overly serious either. And then, of course, we found out a little bit more about what's expected with the Randy Pittman injury. It's going to be closer to 2 to 3 weeks, I imagine. It seems like it was a short procedure, whatever it was. From our knowledge, it was a lower body injury thing. When I found out what the injury was, or what the rumored injury was, I was like, damn, how did he play 62 snaps on that? But apparently it's not a big of a deal, which is anatomy is a crazy thing, but it does appear like Randy Pittman's not going to be out for too long. So maybe 2 to 3 weeks as well. So maybe definitely not a perfect, like entirely 100% perfect view of this weekend for Florida State. You would have hoped to have nobody go out with injuries, but in terms of what was asked of you, what you wanted to get out of the weekend, about as damn near perfect as you could have done. Just talk about what we saw offensively, especially in that first quarter from Florida State, something that I felt like we both wanted to see a little bit more this weekend, and something that we needed to see the early signs of on tape, be able to put it on tape, be able to see it in action. It's the passing game for Florida State. Deuce Robinson and Tommy Castellanos were on one. Not only that first long touchdown, but Deuce Robinson with a great one-handed catch for his second touchdown of the game. I think 4 or 5 receptions, 175 yards was his final stat line. Big boy numbers from somebody that Florida State expects to be a big boy receiver, Bob, both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, they were clearly, trying to shut down the run of Florida State. I think they left a lot of single coverage with poor corner on Deuce Robinson there in the first quarter, and just hoping that you can make that one-on-one matchup work. I think, we're going to qualify all this by saying the opponent is what it was. But still, when you have those types of plays, when Deuce Robinson is able to, to slip past the secondary and was able to beat some tight one-on-one coverage and get catches downfield. Look, 2024, we didn't see a lot of chunk play in the passing game. I think there were roughly 8 or so big passing plays, 30 yards or more in the FBS games. I know this was an FCS opponent, so again, take it for what it's worth, but it looked like a pass game that was really efficient, regardless of who the quarterback was, regardless of who the receiver was, regardless of who the downfield blocker was. That was a big question for us, was without Randy Pittman. He had that left knee wrapped. So I think that kind of tells you what the injury was, guys, right? I mean, if you saw it in our live thread, or if you were following us on Twitter, we were kind of noting what some of the injuries were. But yeah, I thought the passing game really clicked, and it's something to build on. Nick, I don't know if you heard this. Gus Malzahn mentioned it Sunday night when he was talking to us, that these guys have only had about 3 weeks together healthy, just to have. We talked about offensive line continuity. He's talking about offense continuity, like all 11. And then you take Randy Pittman and Roydell Williams out, and you're still scoring on 11 drives. So yes, it's a lot of positives. There's things to correct. There's coaches are going to go through it, and they're going to tear through that film and all that. But man, lots of positives.
And lots of playing time for guys that, as Supreme mentioned, guys like Ashton Bracewell, who was transitioning into an all-field role before getting grandfathered in with the scholarship, but the scholarship changes this past offseason. Guys like that, guys like Michael Grant, whose grandfather, I believe, threw the first Florida State touchdown pass ever. I believe something along those lines. There's some familial history there with guys like Michael Grant and Ashton Bracewell. A lot of guys that you love to see get on the field, not only for their personal development, for just but for also what they've meant for the program. A lot of practice squad guys that were able to get in and make an impact and fly around out there. Really, really enticing stuff to see. And I think it is a good point to say that Gus said that, that it really only has been 3 weeks. It's felt a lot longer than 3 weeks in kind of the grand scheme of things, but it's really only been 3 weeks of this entire offense being healthy. And now, as you mentioned, you got guys coming in and out as they mend up over these next 3 weeks. It's kind of a scary thought to know that Florida State scored on almost every single possession that they had on Saturday. And, week 1 to week 2 is when you're supposed to improve the most. Feels like there's still a little bit more that Gus and Mike can get out of this offense once it's fully healthy and fully going. It's even interesting to note that Gus is putting things on tape against East Texas A&M that he is going to use later. There were definitely some things where you're like, that is a setup for something down the road. So there's just so much layering that this coaching staff is doing while being uber successful on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball for that matter. I think I want to go next to Kevin Sperry. And you and I sat here on Friday and we tossed around the idea, okay, who are we actually going to see in this ball game? Is it going to be the more experienced and the perceived number 2 guy in Brock Glenn? Or is it a reasonable expectation to think that we may see Kevin Sperry second in this game? And it was, in fact, Kevin Sperry that we saw second into this game. And Norvell said something after the game, I believe something to the effect of, Brock has been dinged up. It's allowed Kevin to have a few more opportunities. It felt like the better decision to put Sperry in first, but I don't know. There could be multiple different ways that you can view this in the grand scheme of things. Is this a vote of confidence for where Mike and Gus think the future of this offense lies? Is it truly as simple as Brock being injured through a decent portion of fall camp, and we don't know exactly what that injury is, but is it purely down to the injury? Is it down to understanding of the offense? Is it down to ability? Is it down to the future projection of who they think the starter is going to be a couple of years from now, assuming Tommy Castellanos leaves after this season? Pick your favorite theory out of the hat, Bob. What are your thoughts on Sperry getting in, and what are your thoughts on how he played? He held up really, really well.
Right. Small sample size. I think it was 17 or so snaps, but really the way Kevin Sperry looked, the way he handled the moment, again, that's your first game in Doak, and you can have those butterflies, that anxiety. If he had it, maybe he did pregame, maybe he kind of, worked through it, throwing on the sideline, but he looked like a gamer. And I think, Gus Malzahn's called him a natural a couple times in the spring. He's got some natural ability, not just how he plays the game, how he understands it, his mindset. I like the way he threw from the pocket, the way he threw on the run. He ran a couple times, really well. Again, want you to slide. These quarterbacks have got to slide a little bit better. Tommy learned to slide in that Alabama game, I think, a little bit better too. I want to see these guys protect, because we know the quarterback run is a big piece of this offense, whoever's in it. Then you get into the what is the Brock Glenn injury? How much time did he actually lose beyond the 2 scrimmages? I think Gus Malzahn also mentioned the injury. So they're kind of in tandem in using that as a storyline. I think it tells you that Kevin Sperry is more prepared because he's had more time in practice in a Gus Malzahn offense. And that's probably why he's the number 2 guy right now. I would say long-term, if you're judging maybe Kevin Sperry off 17 snaps and saying he's way ahead of Brock Glenn and Glenn's going to transfer and this and that, I think we're maybe jumping to some crazy conclusions. But if you want Kevin Sperry to be in that 2026 quarterback discussion and say that's a guy who could be the starter next year, I think he's certainly trending in that direction. He's certainly the front runner for a guy who's handling this offense very, very well. And I like it. I want to see more of him against Kent State too. Like, let's keep this kind of NFL preseason game plan where you're getting these backup quarterbacks in there, maybe a little bit with the ones too. Like, right. That's the other cool thing is he wasn't just in there with the 2s. When Kevin Sperry goes in the game, it's Jalen Lucas, it's guys like, Mekhi Danzy, it's 4/5 of the offensive line. There's a lot to work with when you throw Kevin Sperry out there. I like that. I want to see that against Kent State for sure.
You want to talk about happy accidents, Bob. Kevin Sperry was not the quarterback that they thought that they were going to have this time last year. And Kevin Sperry had flipped and committed well before Gus was the named the offensive coordinator, if I remember correctly. I think that happened before Gus was hired there. And yet you have a kid that runs incredibly hard. You looked at his high school tape when he first committed to Florida State and then signed with Florida State. There's an edge to his game where he's almost like a bowling ball, where he's not afraid to lower his shoulder and lean in. And granted, the competition out of a high school program in like Geyer in Denton, Texas, like that's good competition too. You obviously want to see them be able to slide a little bit more. That is something that Kevin Sperry is going to have to learn one way or the other. But what a happy accident it is that they have lucked into this quarterback that not only appears to have a lot of touch throwing the football. I thought he layered the ball on both of his touchdown passes very, very well. Now, obviously, the second one to Oos, I mean, he could have thrown that into a gigantic, like, basket. I mean, Oos was that wide open. But definitely the throw to Boggs. Great touch on the football. In terms of the quarterbacks as well, were you a little bit surprised that you didn't see Jalen King, the ETSU transfer, because I thought that we would have at least seen him for one drive. The plan from the very beginning has been that Jalen King is going to sit and redshirt, but you have an opportunity on Saturday to play Jalen King against competition that he would have been, I don't want to say the word familiar with, but coming from an FCS level, that would have been competition that you would have been able to benchmark. At least in my opinion. Were you surprised that we didn't see Jalen King at all?
Yeah, a little bit surprised. Now, I think there's two ways to look at it. Are you thinking about getting Jalen King in against Kent State and not playing Michael Grant? And that's going to be part of your, say, 4 quarterback rotation if you get to that point. You definitely have games where you can manage King. He can go 4, he can go 5, presuming Florida State gets to a bowl game. You've got this redshirt rule is beautiful as far as getting anybody on the roster experience without damaging removing a year of eligibility from them. Now, still, I want to see more Sperry and Glenn, whereas I think King is still that developmental guy. I think an argument could be made, does Jalen King really play consequential snaps at Florida State, whether it's 25 or 26? Is he in the mix at all in 2026? These are all maybe long-term downfield discussions.
It's long-term discussions, but why are you bringing him in if you can find walk-ons? There's no walk-ons in today's college football, but if you're just needing a warm body, you have a kid in Gavin Markey who's kind of like that Tim Tebow quarterback tight end hybrid that you brought in there as well. Why are you having him transfer in if he's never going to see meaningful snaps? I understand bodies are bodies, but if you're redshirting him and you're planning to play him later in hopes that he'll be able to compete, you need to give him the chance to develop. So I interrupted you a little bit there, but it's a head scratch. It's not the end of the world. Like, this isn't a huge deal, but I was kind of surprised to see Michael Grant kind of carry the reins for the rest of the way and not see Jalen King once.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we can both rationalize each of our arguments, and that's what's interesting about a quarterback depth chart is that everybody's going to want to play, and everybody's going to want to get these guys in and kind of see what they look like, because we haven't really seen very much of Jalen King. I mean, trying to track down highlights of him from East Tennessee, believe me, folks, I tried. I couldn't get them. I know what I've seen on YouTube, and it's just not a lot. There's an argument you could throw Jalen King out there in certain situations, short yardage, goal line. You can get him some snaps that are very meaningful and significant. I'm not sure what the big picture is for Florida State on the quarterback depth chart. I do think these are good problems to have. These are good discussions to have, because you feel better about the talent in the room, but also the fit within the scheme, right? Like, Tramel Jones, let's be nice, would not have fit in with this offensive scheme. I think he will do fine at Florida. He will do fine wherever. But you look at what Kevin Sperry, like he's talked about the happy accident thing. That's a great pickup. And Brock Glenn, I'm sure when Gus Malzahn was hired, Brock's going, oh, this fits me too. Like, this is legitimately an offense where I can succeed in. I'm sure Jalen King's thinking the same thing. Gavin Markey was thinking the same thing. It's a good problem to have. The reality is we're going to see quarterbacks transfer just because the grass is going to be greener somewhere down the road too.
Yeah. You talk about the depth chart at quarterback. I think a very interesting aspect to another positional depth chart that we saw on Saturday was who's going to be on that second team offensive line. We didn't get to see any of the second team offensive line against Bama, obviously, which was a gift from God, might I add. Rue the day, Alex Atkins, that you're rotating 7 or 8 offensive linemen against quality opponents. All 5 of Florida State's offensive linemen started all 65 snaps against Alabama, but we did get to see the second team offensive line pretty much from that. Rizzi was the first guy in. I think that's the distinction there. If somebody goes down somewhere, the likely move for Herb Hanna and Gus Malzahn is insert Rizzi in either the guard positions or at center if it's an interior offensive line position, and then kick Adrian Medley out. And then if there is a problem at tackle, you kick Medley out and then put Rizzi in there as well. So there are options there for Florida State. So I felt like that was interesting to see. But your second team offensive line was Lucas Simmons. I got to see if I remember this correctly off the top of my head. It was Simmons, Rizzi. Rizzi was at center. Then you had Jaden Todd, Jonathan Daniels, and Andre Otto. How could I forget about Chris Andre Otto? So that was your second team offensive line. And it was good to see a clearly defined second unit, I think, of guys that you feel good about. You feel like if they get the development that they need, that they can develop into starters next year. It was good to see a coherent second team offensive line, Bob.
Yeah, I think it's probably been a little while since we've seen a true freshman offensive lineman play a significant number of snaps like this. Good to see Chavez Thompson get out there. There was that 4th and 8 play kind of late in the game. I can't remember if it was after a penalty or whatnot, but Norvell goes for it. It's a little throw down the sideline to Tariq Mallory. But if you watch that play, Chavez Thompson and Lucas Simmons are downfield blocking. Like they know what their job is, and they know the situation is 4th and 8. And to get that 8, their butts have got to be downfield blocking. I think when you see plays like that, and we've seen it from Luke Pettibon and Gunnar Hansen, you see it throughout. Then it permeates to the second team guys, and then they go, well, that's what I need to be doing too. If I want to be out there getting playing time, if I want to be that next man up, I've got to do the same thing. So I think it's good. Andre Otto is developing. Lucas Simmons, we've talked about, is that a potential left tackle, right tackle? Rizzi, hey, he could be a center. He could be a guard on either side. You got to have your options. You got to get to 8 somehow. Herb Hand, I think, has expressed confidence in a lot of these guys. I think he's also expressed, hey, are they ready when the lights come on, so to speak, inside Doak? And again, this isn't the big spotlight games. It's a noon game against an FCS team, but it is a game inside Doak. These are those early moments where you get to see, are these guys ready for playing time and ready for playing time in the event that there is an injury. You have to make sure that they're ready.
I'm gonna allow you to take the stick here and tell me who really impressed you on defense, because I feel like a lot of the glitz and the glamour was just how efficient Florida State was on offense on Saturday and what they were able to do, who they were able to do it with. Pretty much every single they cleared the bench in terms of offensive guys, except for some of the true freshman offensive linemen. I mean, you saw guys like Tayshawn Gelsey, Camden Fryer getting in there, guys that were more down the depth chart. Who stuck out to you on defense? Because there was that shutout. That shutout was in play until that fumble made that possession a little bit too short of a field. Who do you remember sticking out on defense? Well, we'll stick it to second quarter and beyond, because I mean, Daryl Jackson from the word go kind of, that he's going to get his piece of the pie in terms of facing that type of competition. Who kind of stuck out to you second quarter onward for the defense?
Yeah, I thought Jaden Parrish, he only had 13 snaps, but you saw him at middle linebacker a good bit there. And there were a couple times where he really, he diagnosed the play, knew what was happening, made it into the hole and made the stop. That's good to see. He had 3 tackles and really 13 snaps. So you probably know East Texas A&M is going to run out the clock at that point. But again, he sees what's happening and kind of diagnoses and takes care of the job. I think the defensive front, regardless of who was rotated in, it looked really, really good. I know Tony White kind of went through it Sunday night, and he said, hey, they got
Sunday
100
White
rushing. Say that 10 times real fast. The fact that the Lions got 100 rushing yards, he was clearly unhappy about from just a statistical standpoint there. But hey, when you're subbing in that many guys, when you've got communication, you've got new pieces, guys making their debut, you're going to have plays where it just doesn't look like the first team offense or defense out there consistently. Nick, you pointed out Shamar Arnaud made his debut and looked really good. We saw some Max Redmond, we saw some Antonio Cromartie. This is a well-timed game on the schedule to get a lot of true freshmen in, to then go into a bye week, to keep people really engaged through that bye week and working. And then they know they might get that playing time again against Kent State. This is interesting scheduling to have kind of two guarantee games back to back with the bye week in the middle. But if you're trying to find the positives, look at the player development opportunities. They're there for these guys.
I'm going back through the stat broadcast right now because I did want to see how many rushing yards East Texas A&M did have. Do you remember off the top of your head how many rushing yards it was, Bob? Was it like far over 100 rushing yards, or was it just like a just squeak by level of 100 yards rushing?
105, and I assume that's sack adjusted. So again,
what's adjusted for that is I think probably 25 yards of those came on the second last play of the game, where the running back bounces it outside. Jamari Howard doesn't get the best angle on him and is able to not complete the tackle. So I don't want to say Tony is nitpicking, because he's probably not nitpicking. And I bet he'd tell me, Nick, shut up if he were here right now. I'm not nitpicking. It's my defense, damn it. But I feel like a good chunk of that did come at the very end there. I really enjoyed what I saw from Shamar Arnaud, and maybe the thing that I took away the most, and I talked about this in the second watch, is the 4th and 1 play. Yeah, he's on the outside pressing his receiver. Soon as the play starts, like jab right into the chin strap of the receiver that he's guarding, and it stuns that receiver for a second, and then he's like, I just got punched in the mouth. Grabs Arnaud, drives him to the ground, but at that point, you're taking your blocker out of the play. That was the 4th down that Ashton Bracewell actually cut back outside and got that stop. I loved seeing that, like having been not involved, obviously, but been aware of how Arnaud's recruitment went leading up to him flipping to Florida State on signing day, knowing the type of personality that he is, the type of physical corner that he is. I think he has a lot of Jalen Ramsey in his game, and it makes me excited for what the future is. And that's heavy expectations to cast early on a young player. That's heavy shoes to fill. But being able to be gritty and get into your opponent's head and make them pissed off beyond any form of reach is an art form and a talent. That's kind of the part of Jalen that I see in Arnaud, obviously, besides the talent. So I'm really excited to see what the future is for him, and also getting to see some of the guys that surprised us in terms of making the 2 deep. Guys like the Don Father, Donnie Hybert, guys like AJ Cottrell, who you see why they're in the game now. You and I watched them at practice for multiple years, and these are guys that are giving 110%, all the effort reps possible. You see Hybert out there trying to end careers in terms of how hard he was hitting some of those guys. I just thought it was good to see some of those guys get their moment to shine, especially some of those that were maybe a little bit surprising to see on the depth chart. Yeah,
I was curious, about Cottrell. I think he played really, really well. I think Hebert, same thing. How many snaps was he going to get against Alabama? I think we kicked that around pregame. I'm not sure Earl Little Jr. left the field against Alabama. And maybe that was by design because he
Well, he
wasn't
had
going.
to. Well, no, sorry. He went out. I think that was on a touchdown play. So I don't think he missed a snap. Well, no, I'm sure he did. I'm sure he missed a snap, but it felt like he never left the football field.
It's, I think Salah said this on the First Impression show Saturday, is just that your film review is a little bit different for a game like this because the emotion of the entire room is getting fired up for what some of these guys who just haven't played all that much in their career, or the freshmen, they're making their debuts. I think that's what's kind of cool about games like these, is you can kind of see, you can look around the whole room and everybody's kind of got a hand in it, whether it's a run, a catch, a block, a tackle, a throw, whatever. It's kind of a feel-good team type of moment. So these are the positives, and there aren't going to be that many games that go like this. I mean, you can't find too many 77-3s through Florida State's record books. I think optimistically, I can look at Kent State and say that's a game where you want to be in control by the third quarter, and you want to start getting in the backup quarterbacks and get in the freshmen. But then it gets down to business too. It gets down to, okay, what does your depth chart really, really look like? Nick, I still love that meritocracy quote that John Papuchis said, I think, before the Alabama game. And it's one that we're kind of going to be going back to a lot here and there, because we're going, well, why is so-and-so in the depth chart? Why is AJ Cottrell in the depth chart? When somebody you would have thought 3-star, 4-star should have been. Well, the coaches don't care. And I think especially to some extent, the coaches who are back after last year, hey, roll with the guys that have played the best, that have practiced the best. I think as a new coach, you have to look at it too. Tony White, Gus Malzahn, those guys, they've come in without preconceived notions. Like, they didn't recruit a lot of these guys. So they don't know the 3-star, 4-star, maybe mystique. They don't really care. It's just on the practice field, that guy's doing his job. I swear Tony White said Cottrell was Mr. Do Everything Right or something. There was
I think he did say something like that.
When you hear that, again, you go, okay, well, you have to set aside the star rankings at some point and just say these guys are doing the job.
Yeah. I want to bring in a comment here from Jason, who says, does Earl Little remind you of LaMarcus Joyner, undersized but still thumps and finds the football? I think that's a great comp, honestly. That's about it. That's pretty close. Don't you think, Bob? I can't think of anybody. You use the term one of one. I can't think of anybody else that Earl distinctly reminds me of. But if I had to choose one, I think I'd say LaMarcus.
I would argue, with apologies to Earl, LaMarcus was much more versatile as far as being really good at all the positions he played, from corner to nickel to safety to whatever. Look, Earl in this defense was kind of made to play rover. He was born for this role. It's kind of like central casting. He's at that top of that call sheet for this role of rover. So yeah, but I mean, just from a size standpoint, from the the heart inside of him, I love it. I mean, you want to see guys like that who have that desire. Still love the Tony White quote from a while back, where he says, Earl wants to hit the soul out of a player's body. I think that's, again, Tony White trying to speak to the other bigger guys on the defense that, hey, you can play just as well as this guy who might be 190-ish, soaking wet. Man, I'm mixing up my whites and nights and
wets and
it's a Monday. I think Earl's really impressive, and I can see the LaMarcus comp there, for sure.
I want to go back to a comment that Supreme said earlier. This team may not be more talented than 2023, but they definitely are more locked in than 2023. I think the distinction there is how locked in that 2023 team was against the North Alabama as compared to this team, where they were locked in 100% from the word go. I think that's where that comparison comes from. I think there's a long way to go. You're judging one game over the course of what was a year where there was a lot of talent on that defense, and they showed up when they needed to. We'll see. We'll see how this team goes the rest of the way. But I think I'm inclined to agree so far is that this coaching staff has done a better job of keeping these guys locked in a 2-game period than it feels like the old coaching staff was in keeping those guys concentrated all the way through 2023. It's a big gray area though, because I think you take a look at that talent, so many draft picks on the line are on that defense. And so many of them were guys that you probably didn't feel the need to say, okay, you need to lock in this week. Like if you're walking into the facility and you see Braden Fisk and Jared Verse there at 6:00 in the morning, you don't need to tell them to lock in. They're kind of just already there. I think it's a nuanced observation though. And I think that if we're going game to game in terms of handling your business with the teams that you should be clobbering like Florida State did clobber last Saturday, it's certainly an encouraging sign, especially coming off a 2-10, that this team was able to lock in and handle business, because even the games that they should have handled business last year, eventually we got to a point where we kind of knew what was coming, but especially early on, this team just could not lock in and handle business the way that they were supposed to. What do you think? Do you think that this team has the potential to be more locked in than the 2023 team? Is that a comparison that's worth making right now, or do you need to hold out for more time?
Yeah, I think I want to hold out for more time just to see how this team performs, for sure on the road, right? How do they perform Virginia? How do they perform on some of these short weeks, the Friday night games? Mm-hmm. Miami's going to be a big, big early game. Florida State offensive line versus Miami defensive line, Ruben Bain. I think we can see a lot of matchups within the matchup where you're going to start to tell how you really feel about them. But again, early returns. We talked in this offseason about the mindset of a lot of the players. Is there leadership? Is there accountability? Is there heart? Is there drive? Is there chip on the shoulder from a lot of guys who went through a great 23 and a lousy 24? And then how were they going to play in 25? I think we're getting the answer about a lot of these guys. I don't feel like there's too many holes, if any, in this depth chart right now. And I say that with the asterisk of, once Florida State gets Randy Pittman back, then you've got your lead blocker to make the offense really, really tick and work. And let's presume there aren't any big injuries. Again, the Squirrel White, James Williams type things. Let's say they're back for Kent State, Virginia. But do you have any reservations beyond maybe safety depth, beyond maybe just depth at certain spots about the depth chart? Because I feel like I should have more because I had a ton in the preseason, but now it's almost like I just don't.
I am still worried about what this offense looks like when Florida State finds itself behind in the game. And I mean 2 touchdowns down, to where they need to push the ball down the field. You don't have the luxury of setting up play action with a couple of inside zones or some reverses or some swing passes. That is where my reservations lie right now. Offensively, I think I'll go offense and defense. I think offensively, if this team gets behind, like let's say Tommy throws an interception or a pick six, or there's a scoop and score, something that puts Florida State behind the 8 ball. That is not a position that Florida State has really found itself in either of its first 2 games. Now, you love the response to go and drive down the field first game against Alabama and respond there, but you forget Florida State got helped by a penalty that drive. That was if we're sitting on the fence, like we're very close from flipping onto the side where that's a 4 and out. And then, you give Alabama the chance to drive down the field and make that a 2-possession game. Of course, and then looking back in hindsight, you say, well, then Florida State continued to dominate the line of scrimmage, and they were the more physical team throughout. Mike Norvell said it best. That play to Squirrel White was the play that they needed. That long pass to Squirrel was the play they needed in that Alabama game. That play almost didn't happen. If there weren't a penalty, who knows? Diverging outcomes and all of that. So if Florida State finds itself behind, like let's say they go on the road in Virginia and they get punched in the mouth, and they're not handling the road well, and they find themselves down by 2 scores against as a favorite I don't know what that spread would look like, right? How does that team respond offensively? Defensively, I think it is your defensive back depth. And specifically at safety, I think that's where I agree with you. Earl is probably the best player on your defense right now, apart from Daryl Jackson. If he gets hurt, it's not that I don't have confidence in Hybert. It's that there are levels to the game, and I do worry about. I don't. Did we see Edwin Joseph on Saturday? Did we see Edwin?
I thought I did. I can't remember the snap counts, but I thought I did. Yeah.
Well, we didn't see Jabril Rawls. He also was a guy that wasn't playing, but that's
Right.
obviously not his position. I just worry about the depth defensively in the back end. I think I'm aligned with you there. But it's hard to sit here and come up with reservations when Florida State is off to the absolute ideal start that you would have hoped for them this season. It's hard to come up here and be negative about something that's been so overwhelmingly positive. To reference our old friend Pat Burnham, our expectations and our what was the word that he used? Something to the effect of our opinions change week to week, based on what we see, and that's true. And that's true. It is genuinely true. But it's hard to sit here and come up with reservations right now. Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered everything here, Bob. Unless you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think this wasn't a big special teams game in the big picture. We saw all the extra points were made. There wasn't a need for any punts with Max Schimento. I think we saw Squirrel handling most of the punt returns early, and then I want to say Jalen Lucas was back there. But it feels like offense, defense, special teams. This is a group that's shaping up, and I think shaping up to be a really fun team to watch. And that's what kind of gives us optimism. Maybe we didn't want this bye so early because we have that appetite.
Yeah.
Give us a third game, like give us what's next for these guys. You almost wish you could see a Saturday open scrimmage, with them inside Doak on Saturday. It'd be interesting to hear if the coaches really try to simulate a game just to keep it going. It doesn't have to be Saturday or Sunday if you want to give the guys a day off, but do you start to simulate game type situations, between ones, twos, and into the backups? But yeah, I think this is the start of your dreams to a lot of extent. If you're a Florida State coach, if you're a Florida State fan, things are going really, really well. And then knock on wood, you get that injury luck that you really, really need from a depth standpoint.
Yeah, you show a Seminole fan a graphic that says they're in their number 10 or whatever they are in the AP top 25, and I don't know what the reaction would be if you showed them that 3 weeks ago heading into the season that Florida State would be ranked in the top 10 after 2 weeks, nonetheless. But that is a world that I think you and I are happy to live in. And as you say at the beginning of the show, the fact that this team is fun to watch and fun to root for is 80% of it. Because if this team is scraping by and winning games, we'd be sitting here on this podcast and probably ripping the coaches and the players, saying, hey, why are you scraping by? You are literally scraping by. You're playing up and down to your opponent level. That's probably the conversation that we'd be having. But that should do it for this Monday edition of the Osceola.com Seminole Sidelines. You're seeing it in the scroll down below. 31% off for an annual subscription right now. Florida State beat Alabama 31-17. We're doing 31% off. We're doing one better, quite literally one better than the 30% off deal that we were running before. 31% off for your annual subscription. You also get $25 to spend on the Osceola store. So Osceola caps, shirts, mugs, any Osceola merchandise that you could possibly want. 31% off for your annual subscription. You get that $25 gift card, that gift credit to use on the Osceola's branded merchandise stores. So definitely something that you want to take advantage of if you're looking for some new gear to wear to game day, around the house, to bed, wherever you, I don't know. Do you wear FSU shirts to bed, Bob? Do you wear shirts? Do you wear pajamas, or do you? You are not wearing an Osceola. You're not wearing an Osceola polo to bed, Sherry. There is no way that Sherry would have let. Okay.
Not to bed, no.
Okay. Thank you all so much for watching today. This has been the Osceola.com Seminole Sidelines. My name is Nick Carlisle, staff writer and recruiting writer. That's head editor Bob Ferrante. We'll be back. Is Front Row Knowles taking the Wednesday shift again? So Bob and Tom and Keith will be back on Wednesday with the Front Row Knowles crew for a Wednesday edition of the Seminole Sidelines. So we will see you back there then. And until then, have a great rest of your day and a great Tuesday.